Hello, family members. I hope you're having a nice day today. I want to talk about something today that is not exactly fun. It's the economy. And I want to talk about two different messages I see, particularly in Democratic leaning spaces, about the economy and sort of discuss what I think about them. So, the first thing that you'll see a lot is how people are worried about the economy and they're worried about inflation, which is understandable. And they're worried about things costing more than they used to and not being able to afford things. And then the second thing that you see is people insisting that the economy is very strong. If you compare it to other countries around the world, or if you look at the stock market, we keep hitting record highs. We're way stronger than, almost any other country in the world. And the problem with those two arguments is that a person's economic reality is their economic reality. And so I don't know that there's much benefit in trying to explain to people that the economy is better than they think it is. Like, I just don't really know that that's helpful. And while I am aware of the fact that it's not so much inflation that's caused prices to rise, but rather corporations jacking up the price of things because they know that during an inflationary period they are able to do that, and people don't necessarily blame them specifically. They might think it's, actually inflation and not corporate greed, which it is. But that doesn't mean it doesn't cost more to buy things that you need. My mom and I were talking about buying groceries or something the other day, and she was talking about how expensive per unit ounce certain snack foods are. She's like, they're cheap. They're supposed to be cheap. That's why you snack on them, because they're cheap. And she's like, they're 50 cents an ounce. That's ridiculous. And that's what people remember when it comes to the economy. It's probably not necessary for snacks to have gone up that much. The corporations that make those snacks could have probably kept the prices down and sacrificed some of their corporate profit. But of course, corporations love making profits, so why would they do that? It's kind of silly. But, when you're trying to buy things and your paycheck, which isn't getting bigger, is, buying a lot less stuff, well, it's not going to feel like the economy is doing very well to you, is it? It really isn't. And so that's, I think part of the problem is that whatever measures we try to put in place to say the economy is doing well or better or is stronger compared to others, if it doesn't feel like that for the average consumer, trying to convince them that what their reality isn't real is not going to do you much good. Like, people excuse me, people tend to be a little bit self-serving, let's be honest. And they tend to think that the way that they live their life is normal and that things outside of that are abnormal, right? And so if their reality is everything is more expensive and nobody's doing anything about it, then that's their reality. And it doesn't matter how high the stock market goes if you don't own stocks, right? It doesn't matter how much better our economy is than other countries if you don't live in those other countries, right? You know, results matter. You know, reality matters. The fact that it's getting harder for people to feed themselves matters. And we can't explain that away. We can't, make a good case that things aren't harder for people these days, because whether or not we like it, it is harder for some people these days. It is. And that's not something that you can debate your way out of, you know? Financial stress is just so awful. You know, there's such a moral equivalency that we've placed in this society on being not poor and being good. You know, we tend to think of people who are poor as less deserving, as lazy, as not trying as hard or working as hard. We want to believe there's a reason that they're poor, a reason that would never happen to us. Now, that's silly, but it is the way that people's brains work. You know, anyone can lose their job unexpectedly for reasons completely outside of their own, actions. Like a branch could close down, or a corporate restructuring could happen, or like me, they end up disabled and unable to work. You know, I didn't do anything to make that happen. It just did. You know, I just am unable to work, and that's not anything that I have any control over. And, you know, the fact that I'm poor doesn't say anything about me other than that my government refuses to give me the support that it owes me, because it doesn't want to believe me when I say that I'm disabled, which is very frustrating, you know. But that's the thing, it's reality. My reality is I'm disabled, I'm unable to work, I don't have an income, I'm struggling. And if you try to tell me, oh, well, you know, you're better off because you live in a country whose economy is better than other countries, that's not going to feel very resonant to me, you know? Because what I feel is I feel like not very better off, right? So, I mean, I don't know what the right way to approach this is, honestly. I think that we're not going to see any improvement in the consumer prices without some sort of extreme backlash, or maybe even regulatory, intervention. Something has to give, because these corporations are recording record profits and still raising prices and still shrinking the packaging and giving us less for the same amount, and still, taking advantage of us and abusing us and messing up our lives so that they can bleed a few more cents per person out of us, you know? And the interesting thing about industrial scale is that a minute cost savings over thousands and millions of units adds up quickly. And so for corporations, every little drop they bleed out of us means big corporate gain for them, right? So they have very little incentive to do anything other than give us the bare minimum that they can get away with giving us. And, when we're talking about things like food or medical supplies or housing or any sort of, commodity that shouldn't be a commodity, things that we actually have to live, then getting just the bare minimum is no way to live, like it's frustrating that we are required by our economic circumstances to accept less for more money, and then turn around and have experts and politicians try to tell us that the economy is doing great. Like, that feels insulting. It really does. And it's not something that is easily fixed. Finding the political will to do even the most popular things in this country is a little bit difficult, but there's got to be something that can be done, and it needs to be done, because the people who are suffering the most are the most vulnerable. They are people who are from generational poverty. They're people who, and it's children, single parents, disabled people like me, people who lost their job out of no fault of their own, unhoused people, unemployed people, the people that society wants to demonize. We're the ones who are struggling, and we're paying the most because of this corporate greed and this dereliction of duty on our government to do anything to keep us from being exploited like this. And, price gouging is easy when we're talking about like price gouging after, say, a hurricane. That's usually pretty easy to spot and root out. But this kind of price gouging on such a huge, massive scale, by multiple corporate interests and on every level, that's tough. That's harder to root out. And I don't know. I wish that people were more cognizant of the ethical practices of the companies that they choose to support, because it does seem like consumer pushback can move the needle, but it's really hard to get everyone on the same page on that, number one. And number two, I don't know. I don't know if we have enough collective power without our government to do anything to support us here, So I sincerely hope that we can get to a place where people genuinely feel like the United States is a strong economy, not just that we're told that it is because the stock market's doing well or blah, 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 right? If we can't feel it, then it's just not real for us. And nothing's going to lose Biden the election faster than having a bad economy or the perception of having a bad economy. And I truly feel like there's not an issue that wouldn't be worse without Biden as president, because he's the only option we have. We have Trump and we have Biden. Anyone who wants to think there's any other option is just not paying attention. They're living in a dream world where they, want to believe that that's not already set in stone. It is. It would have had to have been years ago that something changed if it wasn't going to be that. But it is going to be that. And there's just not a single subject that I think that Biden isn't a better option for the economy, for education, for infrastructure, for maybe some sort of governmental reform, healthcare, and, in Gaza. I don't think that there's any way to believe that Trump would be better than Biden. And Biden is doing a very poor job. But I don't think that he'd do any better. He does not care at all about other people's well-being. And say what you want about Biden, I think he cares. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I think he cares. And that's a big difference, you know? So I hope they get their act together, and I hope that they stop trying to tell people that the economy's good instead of showing people that they're trying to make it better. All right, family members, I'll let you go. Little dry today. But, it's just been bugging me seeing these arguments made over and over again, and I'm like, come on. All right, well, have a lovely day. Take care of yourself. Bye.